In this video, I'm going to show you why fasting, keto, low carb are some of the worst ways to lose weight and keep it off, because not only is it not sustainable, but it actually slows your metabolism down, and why you actually need to include carbs in your diet if you want to get sustainable fat loss and keep your metabolism fast, and of course, the dangers of chronic restriction, bro science versus real science. I'm going to show you proof as well that this is real science, and then how to lose weight and keep it off sustainably for life. So again, low carb diets, intermittent fasting, these things can cause plateaus, low energy, slow metabolism, muscle loss, inflammation, bloating, and plenty of other side effects. So we're going to cover that in depth today. We're also going to cover the science behind why your body needs carbs for fat loss, metabolism, energy, even digestion, hormonal optimization, bringing down your stress hormones, bringing up your hormones that help you to burn fat and feel satiated, and of course, energy and performance. We're going to go into some real life case studies and examples of people who have successfully transitioned off keto, fasting, low carb, inconsistent, under eating diets into a sustainable, pro-metabolic, carb-based diet. And I'm living proof of this, as well as my clients. I've had 600 plus busy professionals come through our program and lose fat sustainably, eating carbs every single day, every single meal, by optimizing and boosting their metabolism instead of crashing it. And I've also done this for myself, which is how I became so passionate about this, because I did low carb and fasting and all these types of things for years, and had a slow metabolism, was very frustrated, and had all these side effects, which really sucked. Versus once I learned how to build my metabolism up using more carbs, I was able to lose fat on a much higher amount of calories, and this is what I've been able to take to my clients as well. But we're going to go through some client examples so you can see that this works for normal people, not just fitness professionals like myself, but normal people, so you can see how to boost your metabolism while losing fat using our methods. And again, the key point is that most diets are going to crash your metabolism. Our method builds it up while losing fat. And then, of course, why you need to stop falling for bro science crash diets, beginner tactics like keto, low carb, and fasting, and instead learn how to build your metabolism for real over time so you can keep your results and obviously enjoy life. And then the real science behind calories in, calories out, and how to maximize calories out instead of reducing it like low carb and fasting diets do due to the muscle loss and metabolic slowdown. So the first main point that we want to dive into today is the whole point about why low carb can slow your metabolism down. Same thing with keto, fasting, carnivore. Literally every permutation and variation of these restrictive diets that increase your stress hormones, lower your energy levels, lower your metabolism, lower your muscle mass are kind of within the same category. So if you're watching or listening to this video right now, I'm sure that you have tried some of these things in the past, whether it was cutting carbs, fasting, keto, and it might have actually worked initially and you were very excited about the fast results, but then you hit a plateau just as fast as you got the results and gained the weight back even faster than you lost the result, or than you gained the results. Or maybe you never fell off, but you're really grinding hard every day. It's getting very difficult and you're very scared about transitioning off because you know that every time you eat carbs, you gain weight and feel bloated and feel tired. But here I am telling you, you're supposed to eat carbs for energy. So how do you even transition off of that? We're going to dive into that. But the first thing you need to understand is the reason why these diets can cause a very fast initial drop in your weight is because you get a lot of water weight off your body when you cut carbs, and because you probably ended up restricting your calories. So what you really lost when you came off the carbs was most likely water. And then obviously you probably restricted your calories if you're cutting out an entire food group, especially because, some high carb foods also have very high calories and high fats, like, pasta with cream sauce, biryani, fried chicken, samosas, all these things that a lot of people eat, muffins, these things actually have more calories from fat than they even have from carbs, yet people identify them as carbs, which is why carbs get a bad reputation, when in reality it's the fats that are adding the majority of the calories there. So if you cut those foods out because you cut out carbs, of course you're going to be in a deficit, but that isn't because you cut out the carbs, it's because you restricted your calories. And of course, the fast drop in weight was because of the fact that carbs retain water. So if you cut carbs, you will drop water weight, but that's not actually body fat. Now, the big downside here is that these diets are not sustainable in the long run and have a very high risk of slowing your metabolism down. And in addition to this, you are very likely to lose muscle if you're doing long extended windows of chronic fasting for weeks and months on end, and you're not getting enough carbs for recovery and muscular fullness and glycogen synthesis. And so if you lose muscle, that slows your metabolism even further, in addition to the metabolic adaptation caused by not having carbs, not having energy, having your body down regulate, chronic fasting windows. And eventually, because your metabolism gotten so slow from losing muscle and, slowing it down just through the diet itself and adapting to these really low restricted calories, eventually if you do start eating more, you gain the fat back very rapidly, okay? But what you need to understand from a scientific point of view is that fasting and low carb don't inherently burn more fat. Everything is governed by calories in versus calories out. And so This is all the more reason why you need to maintain your muscle mass and keep your metabolism and hormones optimal so that the calories outside of the equation is maximized. That way, even if your calories in is higher, your calories out is that much higher that you're still in just as much of a deficit, if not more, which means you get to eat a lot more food and lose a lot more weight and keep it off way more easily. And obviously, that's very crucial for both short-term fat loss, losing it as fast as possible. I mean, obviously, you don't want to rush the process per se, but you'll lose it faster if your metabolism is faster. And then, of course, long-term maintenance, you want to be able to keep it off, which means your metabolism needs to be fast enough to burn off a normal amount of food, even if you're not necessarily eating on a restricted diet. So carbs are not the enemy. And in fact, carbs are highly beneficial. Carbs fuel your metabolism. They support essential body functions. They protect against muscle loss. And if you cut your carbs too low, this is what causes fatigue, headaches, low mood, and impaired concentration, as well as diet fatigue. Because if you have to restrict yourself from carbs, meanwhile, we all love carbs. Many of our social and family functions include carbs as well. Then there's really no way you're going to be able to sustain it. And every time you have to deplete your willpower to stay away from the carbs, you just get more and more burnt out until you get completely mentally fatigued on the diet, and your body's physically fatigued as well because it's adapted to slow its metabolism down, restricted your energy levels to try to deal with this starving situation. Okay, and we'll dive a bit deeper into that into the next slide. But if you properly dial in your carbs and get the right amount of carbs, the right type of carbs, and the right quantities, the right timing, everything else, which is not as complicated as it sounds, this is going to speed up your metabolism and energy levels. It actually improves your digestion. It's going to support your hormones by lowering cortisol, increasing testosterone, increasing leptin, which is a powerful fat-burning hormone that governs your metabolism and your appetite and helps to improve, not being excessively hungry or not having excessive cravings for junk to where you always fold and cave in to junk. Or you're just always depleting your willpower. Leptin is going to help you to feel satiated, not crave junk, and actually have a faster metabolism. And then, of course, when you get carbs in your system, this helps you to produce more serotonin, which is going to enhance your mood and put you in a better mood. But if you cut your carbs too low, that's where you're going to get fatigued, not only with the diet itself, because you get tired of having to restrict yourself so much and avoid all your favorite foods psychologically, but also because your brain lacks the glucose that it needs for optimal performance. Yeah, you might be trying to burn ketones, but the thing is that if you've also slowed your metabolism down, you're not going to be producing as many ketones. Like a lot of people, the first couple of weeks on intermittent fasting, they feel good and have energy. The first couple, after they initially adapt to fats, they feel good on keto for a little bit. But after a month or two, or even after just 1 to 2 weeks, people start to feel really tired and fatigued because your brain can run on ketones. It's a survival mechanism, but it's not the optimal fuel. The most optimal fuel for your body and brain, your muscles, and your cognitive capacity is carbohydrates, which is why carbohydrates are so important. And then, of course, if you don't have carbs in your system and you're losing muscle, number one, when the carb, even before you lose muscle, when you don't have carbs in your system, your muscles feel weaker because they don't have glycogen, which is their preferred source of fast energy which is the carb storage in the muscle. That's why you drop water weight, is you lose the glycogen from the muscle and the liver. And so as a result, now your muscles are weak. And then as you actually lose muscle tissue because you're not, getting the anti-catabolic effects of insulin, the protein shuttling effects of insulin, and you're not getting a good training stimulus because your workouts start to suck because you don't have enough carbs to support good performance in the gym, and your energy levels and metabolism are going down, you actually start to lose muscle, and that starts to cause you to get weaker and weaker, and all your lifts go down, okay? Carbs are protein sparing, which means that it helps to protect your muscles from being broken down when you're in a calorie deficit, versus if you do low carb, then you have to eat a lot of protein to maintain your muscle, but then even then you can't train hard enough to maintain your muscle either. So lots of issues here. And then of course, if you're not producing enough serotonin, you're going to get irritable, your cortisol levels are going to come up, and your metabolism is going to slow down. So cortisol blocks you from losing fat when it's chronically elevated. Like short term, it could increase, fat mobilization, but if it's long term chronically elevated and you get metabolic adaptation where your metabolism slows down, you're not going to be able to lose fat. You're going to feel irritable. You're going to start getting gut health issues because when your cortisol is high and you have a lot of inflammation, your gut really can't process and eliminate foods properly. And, of course, on keto, you're eating so much fat, and fat is so hard to digest. It takes such a long time to digest to where if you have impaired digestion, no wonder you're getting so bloated and your belly's getting more distended and your metabolism slowing down. Like everything just gets destroyed. But if we add carbs back in the right quantities and at the right pace, like, if you're at 0 carbs right now, you might have to just start with 25 grams of carbs a day and work your way up. If you're eating, let's say under 100 grams, like between 30 and 100, you're not really true keto, so you could add them in faster, but, just adding in 25 grams of carbs every 1 to 3 days will make a world of difference. Your bloating will come down, your energy levels will come up, and before you know it, you might be eating 150 grams of carbs a day, and you might even start losing weight there, and you'll definitely lose water weight when you start to shed the water weight. And then once you get to 150, you start feeling really, really good, and you could even go up by 10% per week from there. You could go up to, well, it depends on the person. Like some people could go up faster than that. Usually I only like to have people increase their calories by 10% each week when we're doing the process up, and I have other videos where I show how to increase your metabolism using carbs. But, let's say you're at 150 grams of carbs and you've brought your metabolism back up to maintaining on 1800, you can bump up to 2,000, which is, 200 extra calories, which is 50 extra grams of carbs. So you can go from 150 to 200, and then your digestive system gets used to it. It learns how to produce the enzymes for that. It expects to get 200 grams of carbs a day. Then you up to 250, then you up to 300. And before you know it, you could be eating 300 plus grams of carbs and still maintaining, and your body is burning so many more calories per day, and you're maintaining at a much higher number of calories. You could be maintaining at 2,700 to 3,000 is where I'm able to get most clients, and many people can go much farther than that. I've gotten my own maintenance as high as 3,700 to 4,000, which is crazy. And even into my 30s, I can easily maintain on 3,000 to 3,500 without having to train a ton. And, it's just absolutely crazy. So there's a lot of great ways that you can do this. I'm going to show you guys some case studies so you guys get an idea of how this actually works. But if you can actually get your metabolism faster using carbs in the right quantities at the right pace, you will be able to build muscle, boost your metabolism, burn fat, and keep the weight off long term. Just don't add them back in too quickly, because if you've done that before, like if you slipped up or had a giant cheat meal with 200 grams of carbs after your body hadn't had any carbs for like 2-3 weeks, I mean, you don't even have the enzymes to process it, and your body doesn't know how to use it properly. You've developed insulin resistance from your high cortisol and the fact that you haven't been eating carbs, and your body doesn't really know what to do with the insulin anymore. Like if you did a short-term carb restriction, like a day on slightly lower carbs, your insulin sensitivity could go up, or if you're in a calorie deficit. But if you chronically cut out carbs and you're eating all the saturated fat, I mean, all these things can increase your insulin resistance and make your diabetes worse, plus gaining more fat, inflammation, cortisol. So that's why you can't add them back in too quickly, because you've developed some insulin resistance from being off the carbs, and you also, are not producing the enzymes to process a lot of carbs at once. So 25 grams of easy digestion carbs, work your way back up, and eventually you'll be eating a normal amount again and having a normal digestion and fixing all these processes that have become dysregulated throughout this process. And again, just to go deeper into it, if you chronically restrict yourself, which these low carb and fasting diets do, metabolism adapts, basal metabolic rate slows down. Many bodybuilders call this starvation mode, even though a lot of scientists don't like that term. It very well describes to the average person what that means. And because your body thinks that it's in a chronically depleted, starving state, it starts to store fat and be very resistant to letting go of it, because it wants to make sure that, if you stop eating altogether, that it has some source of fuel not to die, right? Because you've been starving yourself for so long that your body's worried that you're just going to completely stop eating, or that you're going to completely run out of food. Obviously our bodies have been built in a way that allows us to, survive famines, but unfortunately a lot of people, they end up getting a lot of issues because they've told their body that it's in a famine when in reality it's not. So we don't want to be, storing fat and burning muscle, which is what happens in these situations. We don't want our body to restrict energy levels and cause brain fog and, hurting our mental focus and concentration. We want our body to have the carbs it needs to function best with its metabolism, muscle, and physical and cognitive energy, right? Again, chronic restriction causes an increase in cortisol, which is your stress hormone, which then increases your inflammation, which causes the bloating, digestive health, etc., digestive gut health issues, brain fog, irritability, lethargy, chronic joint pain, many other symptoms of dysregulated hormones and metabolism. And long term, you start to get jaded towards dieting, and then all these problems with your hormones and metabolism make you look skinny fat, where you've lost muscle and gained fat, but your belly is extra distended because of all the bloating, instead of being lean and muscular like what you wanted. Okay. And then you start to get weaker, lose muscle, metabolism becomes slower. And again, you have to remember that fasting doesn't burn fat magically or anything like that. It's still calories in versus calories out, and your calories out has decreased when your metabolism and muscle mass decrease. And you have to remember that long-term low-carb dieting and fasting increases stress cortisol and negatively affects health and body composition and increases inflammation. So again, a lot of these beliefs that, carbs are bad for you, low carb is better, fasting is good for you. I mean, fasting in moderation can be good for you, but chronic fasting is detrimental. And I talk about this in a lot of other videos, and why, from both, a religious perspective and from a physical and metabolic perspective. Fasting needs to be done in moderation and has always been taught in moderation. But all these people who think that, low carb and fasting is supposed to be the magic cure to weight loss, it's really just, a lot of bro science, pseudoscience, watered down or cherry picked from certain studies, right? But real success in the domain of fitness requires science-based, personalized strategies tailored to you across, your macronutrients, your micronutrients, and understanding where you're at based on your biofeedback across both your hormones and your metabolism. And we need to be able to manage your metabolism and hormones and optimize these things so that your body's in the right environment to lose body fat. So macronutrients obviously determine how you look, right? So muscular versus fat, and obviously micronutrients are going to affect how you feel, so your energy, your mood, and your hormones. And we need to be mindful of how we set these things up properly for your individual needs needs to be able to get the best results possible. But again, if we can get in enough protein to support muscle, which is usually between 1 to 1.2 grams per pound in body weight, but again, if you're very obese, high body fat percentage, it might be less. And if you're very small, it might be a little bit more. And there's some genetic differences too, but usually this is a good formula. Carbs, again, as I mentioned before, we have to start at a certain point and understand how to go up and down based on where you're at with your metabolism, your energy levels, your digestion. But ideally, we want to be able to get this number as high as possible. And then fats, I like to keep this as low as possible without going too low. Because if you go below 40 to 45, now we're risking digestive issues because the lining of your stomach does need some fat to function properly. And then, you need it for hormones, you need it to feel good. And there are certain essential fatty acids like omega-3s that you need to make sure you're in your diet or supplementing. But a lot of these people who are eating like more than 60 to 75 grams of fat a day, which is kind of the upper limit that I would recommend for anybody. I mean, again, most clients, I'm keeping them on the lower end of that range, like around 45. But I have, brought myself up to 60 to 75 and had, a few clients who were able to do that with. But again, usually fats I like to keep on the lower end of the range for various reasons, which I could talk about in other videos as well. But if we can balance these things properly and get the proper amounts, that's when we're going to get the best results and have the best metabolism possible. But that's the thing is that, these one size fits all diets, they don't account for your individual needs. Like there might be certain studies or certain people or certain influencers online who have, great results on keto or intermittent fasting, but that doesn't mean it's going to work for you. Okay. And for everybody who has good results with this, there's plenty of people who have, gotten all the negative side effects we've been talking about today. And obviously, if you're still watching this, you've probably dealt with those negative side effects as well, which is why you're here for the solution. And at the end of the day, I mean, if fasting and low carb was the best way to lose weight, and it was that simple and easy, then everybody would be in great shape. I mean, of course, these things are not super sustainable, so that might be one reason why not everybody would be in shape. But there's a reason why so many people who do these things are still fat, still have a belly, still have all this bloating. We obviously talked about it today, but I think it's very clear. So anyways, I've talked enough about, the thing that we don't want. Let's talk about what we do want with some real life examples from some of our clients. So this is Brother Farhad, and before he came to the program, he was eating a good amount of protein. He was lifting 3 to 5 days a week. He was playing basketball, which seems like a good, foundation, right? And he did have a good amount of muscle. And if he would overeat, he would fast for days to compensate, which a lot of people say, okay, that sounds great. The calories balance out. It's calories in versus calories out, right? But the problem is that, when he would overeat and then fast, binge and then fast, that trains the body to retain all those calories and not lose any fat, during that starvation phase, and then store more of those calories as fat during that binging phase. And I've talked about this in other videos. It's very problematic. And if you look at how he was actually eating, his carbs were balanced, but generally too low, and his fat was definitely too high. So we got him eating 3 meals and 1 snack per day, every single day consistently, so his body knew what to expect and could digest properly. Moderate protein, moderate to high carbs. For instance, he would have some days where he would lift and play basketball, so we would actually up his carbs to 250 on those days, versus on a day where he was sedentary, which was rare, we'd do 150, and if he was only doing one of those things, we would do 200. And this was an easy transition for him because his carbs weren't so low that his body didn't know how to use them. It's mostly that his fats were too high and he had this binging and fasting sort of cycle. So by getting him on this consistent schedule and giving him a more optimal 5-day-a-week lifting schedule, he was able to lose 32.6 pounds of fat in 6 months, eating carbs every single meal and keeping his fats low. As a business owner, 34, just turned 35, mashallah, and this brother just absolutely got super, super shredded, right? Another brother right here, Shah. He was struggling with keto, carnivore, low carb, fasting diets for many years, and even had like trainers and all kinds of stuff. And you can go check out his interview on my profile. We're going to be interviewing for Farhad soon, inshallah. It's going to be amazing. But with Shah, we got him eating carbs with every single meal, 3 times a day, 1 snack or 1 to 2 snacks a day as well, carbs and protein, keeping the fats low. And we only had him lifting 3 times a week, very efficient sessions. Sometimes we go up to 4, but usually I believe it was 3, and doing 10K steps a day. And he was actually a super responder. He got results quite a bit faster than the average person, 35 pounds in 3 months, and got absolutely shredded as a 32-year-old desk-bound professional. You can go check out his interview on my profile. Here's another example of one of our clients from a while back who was able to retain his results for years. This is Jason. He was very active, but he was going for long days of work without eating and then overeating and binging at night. But sometimes he would bring a snack to work where he would have like walnuts and dip them in honey as a healthy snack. But that was just causing him to store fat because when you consume all those fats in random quantities randomly throughout the day and spike your insulin with the honey. See, insulin, if you have low fats and high protein in your system, it's going to cause that protein to be stored in the muscle and other tissues that require protein. So it's good for recovery. Versus if you have high carb and high fat together, especially something with sugar, then that insulin spike with a high amount of fats in your bloodstream is going to cause more of those fats to be stored as fat. So that's why we want to keep the fats low when we do this high carb strategy. And because obviously it was keeping him fat, bloated, all that stuff. I mean, he wasn't that fat. He was still very active and working out, but he wasn't lifting consistently. He was mostly just doing martial arts and walking a lot. And obviously, he still had a very dysregulated eating schedule and everything else. And his metabolism was slowed, his digestion was slowed. He had lost muscle from his athletic prime. I mean, he used to be more jacked than this when he was younger. And so we got him eating 3 meals a day, structured with the right amount of protein and carbs and low fats throughout the day. So breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And he lost 27 pounds in 90 days and got super shredded as a 44-year-old business owner. So this works even better if you're already active, because once you start lifting so we only had him lifting 3 days a week, which was a great improvement based on his inconsistent lifting schedule before, where he was doing mostly light weights and conditioning, but not actually lifting heavy. So by lifting heavy, we were able to build muscle, boost his metabolism, take advantage of the protein and carbs, and get him super shredded. His step count was already super high, so that wasn't even something we had to touch. And so as a 44-year-old business owner and father of 2, he was able to get super shredded and keep the weight off for years afterwards. He's still shredded today. This is actually from 2018, and he's still shredded 7 years later, which is crazy. One of my first crazy case studies. Now, this is a brother from last year. This is Zahir, right? He was doing F45 training, another business owner in his 40s. F45 training, 6 days a week, training hard and eating healthy, and that he had switched up his diet a bit and not just eating junk, because he had been diagnosed with prediabetes, but he was still overeating his fats and sugars and undereating proteins and complex carbs. What he would do is he was eating healthy dates and nuts, but he was snacking on them throughout the day, and that's a lot of fat and a lot of sugar instead of eating, high protein, complex carbs, everything else. So we got him eating 3 to 4 meals a day of complex carbs, lean proteins, low fat. We gave him the right type of snacks, high protein snacks like Greek yogurt with berries, stuff like that, that wasn't just going to give him the wrong macros. And we all had him lifting 3 days a week, and we reduced his cardio because that was causing a lot of cortisol, being a business owner working 50 to 60 hours a week. And go check out his interview on my profile as well. But we brought the cardio down from 6 days a week to only 3 days a week, and he was able to lose 22 pounds in 90 days, reversed fatty liver and prediabetes. His doctors were shocked, and this is a business owner and father of 3 in his 40s. And you can check out his interview on my profile. Waleed, another busy, high-stress business owner, and he was buying these meal preps that had too much fat, too little carbs, the whole angle of this meal prep company, which sadly a lot of meal prep companies push this philosophy as well, where the fats are just too high, the carbs and protein are too low, and he was eating 2 to 3 times a day, pretty inconsistent, kind of boxing and lifting here and there, trying to get in shape, but not really truly taking, I don't want to say he wasn't taking it seriously, because this is a very driven guy. I mean, he's got a crazy successful company, but, mashallah, but the thing is that he wasn't following the right strategy. So we got him lifting 4 days a week, no structured cardio. I mean, I didn't prohibit him from doing cardio. I just didn't force him to do cardio. I think he still did a little bit of boxing here and there, eating 4 meals a day. And eventually, once he hit his goal, we were able to get him up to 6 meals a day, and he just kept getting leaner and leaner. And we got him to the point where he's eating 400 to 800 more calories than we were eating in the fat loss phase, and he was still getting more and more shredded every single day. And he got more into boxing and got even more shredded. And I believe he even did a professional, or not a professional fight, but like an amateur fight. And, he lost 20 pounds in 90 days. And then this was the 6-month transformation. So he lost the 20 pounds in 90 days, but this is 6 months after the initial photo, just to show that he still stayed shredded and kept getting more shredded for 3 more months and beyond. Then even 9 months later, he got even more shredded and jacked. But this is an amazing photo right here. Now, another great example is Brother Safe, right? He used to undereat. He would kind of like go between undereating and overeating. Like some days he would cook at home, but he would kind of just undereat because he wasn't really eating much during the day. His metabolism was slowed down. He was skinny fat, everything we were talking about today. So almost like a pseudo fasting thing. But then sometimes he would order from eating out and get, all the calories that come from eating out food. So as he got older and started to have some serious health conditions, which he talks about in the interview that I did with him on my profile, which you can go check out after this. And obviously as you get older, you tend to get more busy, more stressed, more tired, etc. He became seriously concerned about his health. So he decided to invest in our program, and we got him eating structured, balanced 3 meals a day, mostly carbs and protein with balanced fats, doing 10K steps a day, which he would use as under desk treadmill, all that stuff, lifting only 3 days a week, and he lost 41 pounds in 9 months, which is crazy. And I show his example of how we brought his calories back up to 2,700, and he still maintained his leanness. He gained, obviously, muscular weight and a little bit of body fat, but he was still able to stay at, so here he's 9%, he was still 12% body fat, even after gaining 21 pounds when we reverse dieted him. And so the majority of what he gained was muscle. It was only a very minuscule amount of fat. So my big takeaways for you today is that sustainability is what actually matters, right? Carbs, protein, and fat each play a role in cutting any of these food groups out, and not being balanced and being too extreme is not healthy for you, okay? If you don't have enough protein, you're going to lose muscle, and you're going to not have the protein necessary for joint repair, and other key metabolic and physiological functions. Carbs are so important for your metabolism, your energy levels, your performance, everything else, even digestion, serotonin, mood, cortisol control, everything super important, especially if you're a busy, high stress professional, and especially if you're training a lot, and especially if you're doing high intensity cardio like brother Zahir. He needed the right type of carbs instead of just dates that were spiking and crashing his blood sugar. In his case, especially with all those fats, we wanted something that was going to keep him going for a long time, the complex carbs with lean proteins. And then of course fats. I used to try to nuke fats on my own diet, but which was an extreme swing the other way, but that was a mistake on my end. Reality is I needed enough fat for my digestion and my hormones. But you have to understand that sustainable progress comes from balance and precision, not fear-based dieting, fads, one-size-fits-all type diets, right? If you're a busy professional, you need a tailored plan that fits your real life, your travel, all that stuff, not some extreme one-size-fits-all cookie-cutter diet. So don't be scared of carbs. Don't starve yourself. You've outgrown beginner tactics like keto and fasting if you've hit a plateau with them, which is what we talked about in the very beginning. And so if you're a busy professional who wants lasting results, you need a tailored plan that works with your lifestyle and goals. And what I will do is I'll attach a link to our coaching down below. So go ahead and check it out. And inshallah, we look forward to seeing you on the other side. And let me know what questions you have. I'm always happy to teach more. And I'll also attach a relevant video up here and another one up here. I'll see you in the next video. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.